John. Good morning.
Yes. Good
Uh,
morning.
I'm disturbed.
You are.
I'm disturbed
I mean,
about.
I don't see why. Why would you be disturbed after, just watching one of the most disturbing movies ever?
It was. I watched it twice, so I'm double disturbed. I'm double disturbed. It's
Doubly disturbed?
doubly. Well, I watched it once,
Yeah.
and I was disturbed by it. But then I thought about it some more, and I started seeing it on social media a lot of references to it, and it started making me more disturbed because stuff started sinking in, and here we are in this
Well,
disturbed
and
state.
then you told me, hey, we should watch this movie and
Right.
talk about it tomorrow. And I was like, okay, I've heard about this movie. Casey Neistat even mentioned it
Hmm.
and talked about his addiction to social media. And then I was like, okay. And I didn't have a Netflix account, so you let me use yours.
Right.
And because I don't really watch TV anymore,
I'm
I'm
proud of
basically
you. I'm proud of you for not having a Netflix account. Um, I'd be more proud of you if you didn't have a Twitter account. But but hey, baby steps. And I'm all in on social media. I'm everywhere. So uh, I'm impressed still.
Well, I mean, anyway. So thank you. I think that it is definitely, this movie is well worth watching and well worth talking about today because it affects everyone. It's one of those movies that I think that when you told me about it, I watched it last night, which past my bedtime, but it put everything into place. It was
Yeah,
like
it
all of a sudden
distills it.
everything
Distilled
clicked.
truth. Distilled
Yes.
truth.
It was like, it's like when I would imagine if I was blind and I couldn't see, and all of a sudden somebody put some droppers in my eyeballs, and all of a sudden everything just cleared up and I could see.
Yeah.
That's what it feel like, because that's what it felt like, because here we are in a world that's so divided and so polarized, and this brings everything into focus, helping us to
Yeah.
see. So what
We are
is
the
what is
fish.
it?
We're the
Yes.
fish, and we've
Yeah.
just been told that there is water,
Yes.
and that
Yes.
the water is and that
It's
not
poisoning us.
everyone. Right. Not everyone is in water. There's something outside the bowl, and
Yes.
we're deep in, and the
Yes.
movies again. The Social Dilemma. It's available on
Yes.
Netflix. We'll put a link down below, but it was it's social commentary and drama, sort of
Yeah.
kind of parallel. It's a parallel of commentary and drama, which I thought was an interesting technique as well. Uh, what do you think of? So why don't you describe what the movie was about? What give us the play by play.
So I think I mentioned you before. Basically, this is to me was Food Inc. Except with on steroids,
Right.
and it made me see the world in a way that was like, oh, an aha moment. And two, it caused me to have a major, not just a dilemma, we have a major problem.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they use their word very carefully. Anyway, so what the movie was talking about how social media, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, Pinterest, go down the list of all these different social media platforms, and how they don't just entertain us. I love the way this guy described it, was that they are slightly modifying our behavior, and that
By a tiny little bit.
Yes.
It was beautifully described. It was beautifully
Yes.
described by a number of people, but there were some who had a great job. And
This
yes,
guy that looked wild, he definitely was the guy with the dread,
right.
the weird,
And
little beard.
yeah, I should be
He
more
was
prepared with his name, but he was crazy looking,
I
but
don't remember his name either,
yeah, he had some great
but he's
thoughts.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So they go into this thing talking about how human beings, we are so susceptible to influence, and these platforms have actually created algorithms backed by supercomputers to manipulate us, to make us into creatures that will do almost their bidding. And that's what's so scary about this thing, is because most human beings don't even realize. We don't even realize it's unbeknownst to us, and we're completely unaware of this, that we're being manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
And these algorithms show us not just what we want, but recommend things that they think will keep our attention and will
And it's
also alter
interesting.
our behavior.
It's interesting that you use the term that they're sort of training us or encouraging us or whatever, uh, forcing us to do their bidding, and it's literally is bidding, because
Yes.
it's all about money. And
Yes.
it's an advertising. It was a decision to be made in about 2005 that social media would be financed by advertisers, which basically productized us, the viewers, the users,
Yes.
and the 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 value of our eyeballs are bid against other eyeballs for
Yes.
based on keywords, based on, and that's really what there's several algorithms going on. There's the user algorithm that generates
Yes.
what I'm going to be seen, and then there's the
Right.
value that the value that I represent for advertisers,
Right.
the value that the
Right.
likelihood that I'll click, and that is maybe in pennies or fractions of pennies, and so it is really doing the bidding of these corporations. It's
Oh,
very
it's
disturbing.
terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
That a couple of things I think that really struck me was how much this has caused these young women to harm themselves, like the whole like the cutting and the depression for young women, for girls to go up by, I can't remember, it was like 160% or something, like that, because at one point beforehand.
Yeah, the sort of self-harm rates
Yes.
have more than doubled, and what was amazing was that the suicide rate
Yes.
among girls, middle school girls and younger, has more than doubled
Yeah,
since, we're
like
talking
30.
about since about 2011, when
Yeah, 2010.
Instagram,
Yeah.
when was Instagram acquired, and when did Instagram become a thing? It was a $1 billion purchase by Facebook. I think it was 2010. Is that right?
Yeah.
It was so
Yeah,
so
it definitely coincides with all with all those major tech social media platforms as they came to on the rise. They also cause these. So I mean, just things like that. And the other thing was other just tidbit was before we kind of give it own comment on their social commentary. The only two industries that call their customers users is the drug dealers and the technology companies.
the social media platforms.
I was like,
right. You have clients, you have customers,
yeah,
and right, and then you have and then you've got users, and users are basically, because users are and because they're both addictions. There's a drug addiction, there's a social media
that's
addiction,
true.
and they went into sort of the science of the science of this and how this works, because there's apparently some famous course at Stanford that is taught by this famous
persuasive technology, like that.
right, persuasive technology, and and all of these people have been through this course. All of the people that create these social media platforms are, and they learn how to change things. And it's not like you don't have choices. It's not like you don't have options. Like you don't have to follow the algorithm. You don't have to watch the next YouTube video that's fed to you by the algorithm. I mean, that's really what that is. We've all done that. We've all, started off watching a YouTube video on how to fix your toilet. And then we go down the rabbit hole of, ultimate fighting. And then we find all of a sudden, like an hour later, and we've been, we're down this rabbit, we call it the rabbit hole. And that is allowing that algorithm to take over and feed you this information. And it's amazing how quickly it appeals to our most base and violent instincts. And at least for me, what happens, I'll start with a video on, something about, maybe I recently got a car, and I'm all of a sudden, I'm watching these videos, and all of a sudden it morphs into some sort of boxing or some sort of, street fight or something like that. And I didn't even, the time stands still, and I'm just there watching, and I have to catch myself. I'm not proud to admit that, but that's the phenomenon. That's the algorithm at work.
Yeah, doing its finest work on you,
debasing us, bringing out our worst. It could bring out the best in us. It could show me, videos of, like the history of Mother Teresa, and and how to, how to help my neighbor. But no, it's showing me, horrible violent stuff, because sadly, that's what keeps people engaged. And I'm not the only
Yeah.
one. Clearly
Yeah.
there's a billion of us doing that, and it
Yeah. 2
changes our
billion.
brains. 2 billion of us. Yeah. 2 billion. It's absolutely, and we're monetized. We're given a value. What's interesting, I thought also, was that description of how you can choose. So I said, you can choose to click the video rather than take the one that's, suggested next. You
Yeah.
can choose to not scroll through things and actually search for things on Facebook. You can do that, and that would frustrate the algorithm in a sense. And,
Right.
but it's a little harder, and it's a little
Yeah. It's
harder. And
deflection.
that tiny little hard, so you've got that angle. Now you've got the
Yeah.
whole these 2 billion people. How many of them are going to do that? Just that little bit of path of least resistance is going to change the world. And it has
Yeah.
changed the world. And look at the mess we're in.
Yeah.
We're in it now, folks. We're what, 4 weeks away from it.
So let me ask you this. So let me ask you this, as an I'll break a little bit of form for us, as a person who is staunchly against Trump. Does this make you pause? This movie make you pause a little bit from not necessarily being less disapproving of Trump, but does it make you pause about how you've reached these conclusions, or what you've thought about people who have supported Trump, or the news that's being given to you? What does that do for your thinking about this, about thinking about your thinking?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, and I've been asked that question before. The
About this
power
from this.
from this, the power. I've had multiple conversations about this movie, and it always gets down to Trump. Well,
Yep.
and I would say no. I would say that it has, of course, everyone's going to say no. I'm not influenced by this stuff. I'm above it. But I get back to my moral compass. I get back to the science.
I don't mean about Trump. I meant very specifically about not talking about, because I think that most people who are disagree with Trump disagree with Trump. But I'm talking about how you see his supporters.
Oh, do I understand?
Other...
Yes, yeah. I do understand. Does that make me feel sorry or sympathetic or less harsh? I think that the number one, when you abdicate your brain, when you abdicate what to be right, what your moral compass, it's over. And you cannot tell me that that wearing a mask, despite all of the evidence, wearing a mask is a bad idea. You can't tell me that. And
but they're not getting all that evidence. They're seeing a very different feed of news. They're being fed very different viewpoints on coronavirus.
right, that's assuming that they are completely cut off from the rest of the world, and none of us are completely cut off. I guess Fox News could be considered part of that, but I don't know, is that social media? No, it's not really social media, though. Maybe it is the way.
But social media fuels it and powers
social media
it.
fuels it, and depending on where how people consume Fox News, it can be social media. So if I'm watching,
oh yeah, for sure.
So if I'm watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, any of these channels on my TV with my remote control, which I can do through my my connection, it's more like TV. It's one way. I'm receiving the broadcast. But if I'm doom scrolling through Facebook and I see a Fox News post, that's interactive, and that's social media. And to me, that's so you're right. You can quickly and easily be in that bubble. And yes, I can see how that happens. And I was surprised to learn last week, not connected to this movie, I learned independently that most of Facebook is right wing. Most of the most of the social, the political discourse skews right, but in my
Interesting.
world, it skews left. I don't see I don't see differing opinions, but the rare times that I do, it's met with viciousness. It's met with, horrible, violent rhetoric. And that's the moment of polarization. That's what happens. But hold it, you can't tell me that, what is going on in the Trump administration is right, social media or not. That, the objective facts are that, there's some nefarious stuff going on.
But it's, yes, I will say this. I think that it's not just, left wing, right wing, conservative, liberal. I think the point of the movie is that because the algorithm is giving us and recommending us content that we would watch and keep our attention,
Mm-hmm.
that system is polarizing us further and deeper
Right.
than we've ever been. And so I'm saying that, I think what this movie is telling us is that you, Howard, me, John Pa, anybody else who's in social media, you are being fed content that they know will keep your attention and will radicalize you even further and entrench you further into your belief system,
Absolutely.
even if it's wrong. It actually will make
Absolutely.
it more wrong.
Exactly. Yes, and we saw that with the Pizzagate, which I do want to get into that. But
Yeah.
here's an interesting example of that, because you're spot on, John, about that. And here's an example of it. And because if you don't believe that if there are a few people out there who don't believe that social media has that power to divide, let's take the left, let's take the liberals. And now we've got a heated primary with many contenders. This was, let's go back to March. March of 2020.
Yeah.
And there's like 20 people on the stage, and it's, and there's this craziness going on, and they're, just jockeying for the front lead. And all of a sudden, social media, I think it was social media, starts splitting us between, Bernie and, the rest of the pack. The Bernie bros are being separated. So the viciousness between the Bernie supporters and the rest of the Democrats, that was as stark as the difference between the liberals and the conservatives, which I thought were the Trump supporters. And that's because that's where the money is. And that's what these young executives were saying about their platforms, and that the shame of it is that, it's that the money is in the division. There's no money in unifying people.
Yeah, the money's in the drama. The money is
in the pain. Money is in the
fighting.
Separation, right?
Yes, and so that's why I think that this is. I'm hoping that this piece will give this documentary will give humility to all of us, so that we can actually say, you know what, I'm not saying we're all volitionless. We don't have our own volition, but I do think we're all, to a very large degree, victims. And I think that because I look at this, I'm not extreme on either side necessarily. I'm very much utilitarian. I am conservative to a certain degree, but I also am liberal in other ways. But I look at this, I see some of my very conservative friends, and I'm a Christian, and I see other Christians being very entrenched and hardcore Trump supporters.
Yeah.
And I look at that, I go, I've been trying to understand why. And I think that because it baffles me. But now I know this, I watched this movie, and I go, that makes absolute sense. They have been manipulated to think these things. Not just, they probably would, in back in the day without social media, they would have just been reading the newspapers and probably would have created a stance on whatever it is, and it would not have been as extreme.
Right. But these debates have been around forever. There's nothing new here. There's nothing new here.
No,
we had the moral majority.
Even misinformation is not new.
In the 80s, we had Jerry Falwell.
Seeing my friends go through this. So seeing my friends believe this disinformation, it helps me, I think, realize, wow, they're not just being foolish or they're not just being, you know, they're not just being, they're not just lacking information or reading the wrong things. They are being fed the wrong things.
Yeah.
They are being fed disinformation, misinformation. So
Yeah.
that I think that just kind of it was an eye-opening understanding.
Well, the idea that, you know, that George Soros is funding a pedophile ring that is operating out of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. is so preposterous, so ridiculous. And yet a man felt so incensed by this that he traveled there and tried to liberate the children who were being sexually abused in the basement of a basementless pizza parlor. And it was crazy. It was a
Yes.
crazy thing. And you see a clip of him being arrested and he's explaining that I was trying to save the children. And then one of the cops is always talking about,
And you've got,
no, this is like, oh yeah, it's Pizzagate. I get it, you know, like, come on.
and you
So
got to
how many,
applaud that. I mean,
on the left wing, how many, what's the equivalent on the left of that? What are we falling for? I don't mean this rhetorically. What are we what am I falling for that is completely preposterous?
What do you think?
I don't know. I'm the fish in the fishbowl and I don't know there's water around me. You are outside the fishbowl, maybe. At least
I guess to a certain degree, I am out of the
that's
fishbowl because I don't really follow that closely, and so I think that the anger, there is so much anger. Not I think people are right to be angry at Trump. I'm angry at Trump. I think a lot of people are angry at Trump. You know, for him to even dare say that he's not going to allow the peaceful transfer of power, I think is an enormous affront.
Just allow that to float out there. Allow that doubt to kind of linger. Yeah,
that is so destructive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I find I am incensed by the racism. I'm incensed by that stuff, but I am even more so about that statement. I was thinking, wow, is he really going to destroy the fabric, the fragile fabric of our democracy?
Well, he just wants you to wonder. He just wants you to think about it because, you know something?
Yes.
Because, you know, there are going to be some people who think, I don't want riots. We just deal with another 4 years of it. And then we'll just, you know, we choose peace over justice. And we slowly degrade our democracy. And this is a product of social media. This would not, these messages would not travel around the world with such intense velocity and building in momentum, you know?
Yes, exactly.
They said that a lie travels 6 times faster than the truth on the internet. And
that's
it's been literally measured. You know, that happens. And so, you know, we're screwed, you know? We're screwed.
And I think so. One of the major things that I see, at least on the liberal side, is that, and I think that's a great question, is the animosity. It's not I think it's the reaction. It's the animosity towards people who are conservative. I think that if we can see each other as human beings, because this is what it's doing, it's dehumanizing everybody. We are no longer a human being with our own, you know, sentiments, history, stories. We are now people who are they're not even people. They are things that are opposing us and getting in my way of my belief. And that's where I think social media is causing harm, not just on the left, but also on the right. And I think
where could we, like, where did we go wrong? Like, what happened? What was the inflection point, in your opinion, that where we stopped listening to reasonable conservative ideas and we poo-pooed them and we said, no, you're not worth listening to, you know?
Yeah, no, I think
there had to be some point where we gave up on the conservatives as a legitimate, you know, ideology. I mean, I just can't see, you know, and I'm right in there. I can't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it. It seems like it's like a flow chart. And I I just think that all these things, like, well, Trump helped, there's evidence that Trump has not paid taxes. It was in the New York Times just this
Yeah.
last weekend. There's certainly tons of evidence of these things. And, and you share that with a conservative, and they say, well, everyone does it. Then you push again and you get another excuse. You push again, and eventually it gets down to the fetus, or it gets down to the gun. It all, and then it's like, okay, now once you bring up the word fetus, the conversation ends, because that's the place. Or guns, or you're gonna take my, it's my guns, my right to have guns. I have a right for that, and I'm afraid that that's gonna be taken away.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I don't think there was a point. There was never an inflection point. I think that just as that guy said with the dreads, he said it was a slight behavioral modification.
Right.
And so that's what's so dangerous about this, is that it's so gradual.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not a flip of a switch. It's more like you're just kind of sliding down a small slope. Yeah. And you can't even tell the difference about what just happened before to what just is happening now, and who you're becoming later. And that transformation is so gradual that people don't even see it. And so that's it. It's obviously happened between 2010 to 2000 to now 2020.
Right.
And I think that's through this, because it's essentially, I don't want to use the word radicalized, but I do think that there is a sense of radicalization in every single human being because of the extent of our anger.
It's polarization.
So,
it's polarization.
Yes.
That, it's not, you take somebody, there's no money in the middle. There's no money in being a moderate. It's no excitement. No. It makes terrible television. I mean,
very boring.
It's very boring TV. And what's interesting is the drama. We haven't really talked about the sort of dramatic part of the movie, which was, a little cheesy, I think. But, in an attempt to not offend any of the viewers of this movie, they were talking about the radical center. The radical center was the extreme center. Like, of course, it's impossible to have an extreme center, but that was their sort of dramatic, vehicle to not offend anyone. Like,
but it captured the understanding what's going on.
But that's where I had the problem. That's where I sort of said, okay, maybe this movie isn't all isn't the last word in what's going on with social media, because I think there is a right and there is a wrong. There is an objective right and objective wrong. And we both know that. We both know that what's going on with the Trump administration is opportunity hoarding, it's corruption, it is a degradation of our institutions and our Constitution. That is,
they said that. They said they said that there was clear right and wrong.
But it is not I think they were also in that dramatic description. I'm talking about the dramatic part of it. The documentary part of it, the drama part, that they're drawing false equivalencies, even in that sort of that extreme, even using that extreme middle. Maybe that was to keep the audience going, but it's clear. One thing is clear, that on the documentary side of it, those young internet executives, and we're talking about some of the heavy hitters. He's the guy who invented the like button, the guy who created, Firefox, the guy who, was the first monetization manager for, Facebook. Right. Yeah. These are not, they're not,
he's not schlubs.
He's not schlubs. These guys were the architects of this, and they had the best of intentions. And I truly believe that nobody invents a like button knowing that in 10 years or in 15 years, it's going to be, little girls are
weaponized.
Going to be, wondering if their ears are too big because, of a comment that makes, or they didn't get enough. Or if you don't, it's like, if I got 10 likes 10 years ago, if 10 people said they liked something I said, I'd be like the best day of my life. But
you went viral.
Right. But no, it's just walking around. Oh, I really like you. I like you.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. But now 10 likes isn't nearly enough. It's not nearly enough for these kids. And in fact, it's an insult.
No.
And that's really, that was a sad part where that, that young girl is sort of,
Oh,
she's in her room and she's, it's a very confusing moment. And I that was a sad, you got to watch the movie.
yeah, yeah,
Watch the movie.
yeah, 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 definitely. So,
Do your children,
so,
what's your plan for social media in your household? You have young kids. Obviously they're too young for social media right now.
oh yeah,
But
I'm too young. I'm too young for social media.
I'm both too young and too old. I don't think anyone is appropriate for social media. But one thing I was also interested in is that these social media pioneers, these early tech people who are still
Yeah,
quite young,
yeah,
they don't allow uh, these devices in their kids' hands.
yeah,
They
yeah. No,
drop,
one guy was talking about he wasn't going to let his kids have social media, or at least phones, even until they're 16.
right.
And I think we're definitely leaning towards that. We're thinking in the teens. We've heard that most parents have a hard time keeping a phone out of the kids' hands by the time they're 10.
Yeah.
And I could see why, especially in New York. When we were living in New York, a lot of kids start going to junior high on their own
Right.
when they're like 10 and 11. So that makes sense. You want to be able to geo-track your kids.
Well, that's
And
all part of the tools that they put in there to undermine your desire to not have your kids on social media. So it's like, if you want those tools, you got to have the social media, if you want,
yeah, you don't have to have social media to actually track your kid on the phone. And I think you can restrict a lot of those things. And I'll tell you the truth, for me, like I restrict a lot of my own phone behavior or phone usages. I use my phone a lot, like probably all day, but I use most of the time it's for reading, for writing, for looking at, researching or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I rarely ever use it for social media. And I use things like, I don't use the screen tracker, but I do
time
have a
tracker,
do not
right.
disturb. I do have, the timer. I don't have I do have to use the do not disturb on there quite a bit most of the day. And then two is I put it in what is that called? Grayscale. I put my phone in grayscale.
Right.
I will
Just to
say
kind
that
of the
if there
dark
is,
mode or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, not just dark mode, but like it makes it all black and white, basically, in
So
gray.
it just takes some of the eye candy away from it and makes it less.
Exactly. So because
right.
the colors are used to actually become more addictive to keep your eyeballs locked onto it more.
I do this, occasionally I'll look at my screen time tracker, and the other day it showed that I had actually spent 73 hours in one day on social media.
How do you spend 73 hours in one day?
I
There
don't
aren't
know.
73 hours in a day.
I don't know. No, it's not. I'm just joking. But it's just the amount of time that I spend on it's embarrassing, the amount of doom scrolling I do. And those of you who are friends with me on Facebook, and you're welcome to send me an invite if you dare. It's I am part of the problem. I am
We all
definitely
are.
part of the problem.
We all are. I mean, I'm not immune to this. No one is immune to this. I think that the question is how can we as human beings not just have compassion on people, but to actually have empathy for each other.
Yeah.
I think that to me is like, to realize that, oh, we're not just, we're in this together. Like these companies want us to become more radicalized. I won't say they want us to. That's not.
They want to monetize us, and if that's what it takes, they're willing to flush the whole freaking thing down the toilet. They are more than happy to trash the democracy, to walk on the Constitution, and also they're not answering to the United States government only. They're answering to the Myanmar government. They're answering to Putin. But that really has the effect of they answer to nobody, because they are the most important government in the world. They're kind of like what the church was in Europe in like the 15th century.
Yeah, no, they're a nation state. They're their own sovereigns.
Right, and it is we are. I think I would imagine that many young people are bound to their social media platform of preference more than they're bound to their own country. I think that's their place.
That's
their
right.
identity.
So, what do you think is the answer? I would just make a couple observations before, while you're thinking about
Yeah.
it. One was right in the beginning, they asked, the interviewer asked them, what do you think was the problem? What do you think is the problem? And they all kind of like just smiled and like paused and laughed. And that was an interesting kind of like start. That was like kind of the major, boom, and then they put it, that was the end of the intro and into the actual meat of the documentary. And then two, is that I think that the other point was that they said, imagine this platform or platforms like these in the hands of a despot or
Imagine they are.
Yeah,
we got one tweeting all day long.
And that I was just like, I think that was meant to be kind
Right.
of, right. It wasn't direct.
Yes.
And, but imagine, but he is discerned, but imagine a real, not just president, but a dictator. Right. And this is where it feels like it's heading. And then the last thing with that was the president of Pinterest, that former president of Pinterest said that the thing he was afraid of most is civil war. And I was thinking
two of them said civil war.
Yeah.
And one of them said the end of the world. The one additional one of what 5 people, like 3 of them were saying it's the end of the world. Now they're millennials, but I do at times think that we're destined for civil war. I think that's the case unless something gets. But you know what I think is interesting, and again, I'm not going to turn this into a political ad because she's gone already. But I supported Elizabeth Warren early on, and what I really liked about her is that she did. What's the solution? It's regulation. We regulate things that are dangerous, and we don't traffic. And there was the woman who's I think she was a Harvard professor. I can't remember her name.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Fantastic hair.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah. She amazing hair. And she said that
she did have amazing.
So she said that that it is illegal to traffic in certain things. It is illegal to traffic in human bodies. You can't.
Right.
Slavery is illegal.
Remember that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Slavery is illegal. It is illegal to sell sex in this country. It is illegal to sell drugs. And why? Because those markets are inherently dangerous and degrading to our society. They will cause damage to the country. And look at it, it's true. Very few people would. Right. So this is, so why are we trafficking in our emotions and in our opinions and our thoughts? Because that's really what's happening.
Trafficking our brains.
We're trafficking in our thoughts, and it's being manipulated. These manipulations are being sold, marketed, and sold to really the highest bidder. And really, that your outrage. Do you know what your outrage is worth to Facebook, to a Facebook advertiser? It's about a fraction of a cent. It's maybe 3 cents, for a real strong outrage.
I don't know. I mean, I'm serious. I think mine's $5 and maybe yours is 10.
Maybe on Google, like a Google search, but I'm talking about Google search. I'm talking about Facebook ads. I'm talking about YouTube ads. These ad platforms monetize our outrage.
Yeah.
And put us into a place where we are highly engaged online and highly reactive and more likely to take action. And then all of a sudden, an ad pops up saying, give to Act Blue, which is a fine cause, I think. But I'm outraged, and I'm more likely to give $5 or $10 to the Democratic, senatorial campaign committee, because I've doom scrolled for 20 minutes and I've seen what Mitch McConnell's doing.
76 hours. 76 hours. That's how long you doom scroll.
76 hours a day in a 24-hour day. Really a lot.
So let's talk about regulation, because I think that is inevitable. That's what people have been talking about. Yeah. And I think that this is probably I feel like there is a cultural shift that this same as Food Inc. did for food. I think this is going to do for us in our minds, in our psychology and advertising. I would imagine that politicians who are watching this, and I don't mean like necessarily the White House, but I do mean like senators and Republican representatives, are thinking, oh my gosh, because this thing sums it all up and provides a nice little, package where anybody can watch this thing and realize, whoa,
Mhm.
this needs to be handled.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think that's going to look like? And do you think that's right? Do you think it's right? And what do you think
No,
that's going to look like?
it's wrong. The model was wrong. They got it wrong
No,
early.
I mean regulation. Is it right to
No,
regulate?
I'm talking about regulation.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
got it wrong. Let's just go back to the model.
yeah,
What's the
yeah.
model? Is an advertising? Is it model? Stupid model. It's an advertising model. Is the dumbest. You're in the media business. I'm in the media business. We know that the advertising model is it's a way to make some money, but it is not an elegant tool. And because it is fraught with conflicts of interest and all the things that we learn in
Yeah,
journalism.
yeah. It can be destructive.
So
They probably had no idea how destructive it was going to
right.
be, but
Well,
it
of course.
certainly,
Well, they're thinking
yeah,
short term. That's capitalism. That's
yeah.
just one of the problems with capitalism. But I think so you challenge them. So a good regulator, would challenge the model. Would say something, you cannot monetize an algorithm. You cannot create an algorithm that monetizes people.
Whew. Could you imagine the stock price then?
You'd lose. Well, you'd lose. A couple $1 trillion worth of the world's market
Cap.
Those would just go down the tube, and
Yeah.
we suffer greatly for it. But something, we're suffering greatly for it now.
Oh no, for sure. I'm not.
The
Yeah,
swings in the
making
Dow are crazy. These swings that we're experiencing in the Dow. That is tech. That's tech. Tech used to be something that they make computers and they make make routers, and they you sell the stuff, and you go on and you buy some software and you put it in. And remember those days? You go to a software store and you buy a program,
Norton's
like Lotus 1, 2, 3. You put it in. And, that was a computer. It wasn't very fun. Wasn't very sexy. But now, those aren't the products.
No.
You're the product. I'm the product.
Yeah.
We're all the product. And until that changes, the regulation would change that.
So you're saying that you think that regulation should be, the government coming in and saying, hey, you need to change your monetization model so that they will stop being so manipulative and using their platform to change people's minds so that
you can't create a marketplace that manipulates people's brains and then monetizes that polarized brain. You can't do that. That is again, they're users. We're all users on this thing. We're all.
Why wouldn't they just slap? Why wouldn't you just slap like those cigarettes, boxes where they put on there? You are being manipulated right across the huge screen.
It's true. If you could tax it. You could tax every
tax it. Yeah,
you could tax every post. You could
against the company.
But then
against the company.
Yeah, but the problem is, look what's going on in political campaigns. You have unlimited campaign contributions now, thanks to Citizens United, a terrible Supreme Court ruling of during the Obama administration. This was that was just simply, you can put as much money as you want. We have laws in the United States now, basically the Supreme Court precedent that basically said that money is speech. Money is speech. So advertisers have a right to put as much money as they want into any platform that they can. So we really have to question the algorithm, question the way we're monetizing. I just think that these platforms need to adjust the algorithm and take the profit out of the polarization. It's all in the algorithm. The problem is that the people that would regulate it would have to be as smart as it never works that way. You're never gonna, and you're ripe for regulatory capture, which basically means, can you imagine that regulatory, like where the regulator then gets hired by Facebook, after 6 years of time in there, and that revolving door, because
to know how to game that system.
So that's another thing that I think Elizabeth Warren has been very adamant about, really kind of shutting that stopping that revolving door between regulation and those who might capture them. So I think I think the answer is that. I'm actually quite sure that that's the answer.
I don't know. I really don't. I do think regulation has to happen. I wouldn't have thought that a year ago. But watching this I go, wow.
Mhm.
I'm not a person that thinks, oh, government should step in and everything. But I look at this, I go, who else is going to step in? I don't know.
What
I
is
don't think.
government for? What is the role of government?
Yeah, I mean, then that its role as many different roles.
Right.
But I think that protecting its citizens
Mhm.
is definitely one of them. Sometimes it has to protect a citizen against its own citizens,
Mhm.
and so I think that this is one of them. And so, what does that look like exactly? I have no clue. I think that that's a good point. I think that I haven't really thought about it much because having just seen this, it finally clicked to me. I was like, yes, regulation needs to happen. How I will say that I think hitting the monetization model is interesting. Finding ways to how to maybe having fact checks, like
Mhm.
having something that actually is fact checking literally everything that is being put out there
Yeah.
and saying this is disinformation.
Who's going
That
to
could be
do
some.
that? There's no.
I'm just saying. I mean,
Right.
maybe
Right.
they could write an algorithm for that.
Yeah, you can't, there's no, all of a sudden you'd have lawsuits about, well, that's a fact and you called it not a fact. And, you know, the algorithm that the thing that's addictive needs to be, you need to identify what that thing that's addictive is. And that thing that's addictive is the, feed, is the part of the algorithm that identifies what is going to come next in your feed. What is going, it's interesting. You look at your feed and I look at my feed and they're totally different.
Yeah.
We're kind of aligned politically,
Yeah.
and but even my friends who I'm absolutely, aligned with,
Yeah.
politically, uh, our feeds are completely different. And someone who's watching Fox News and is, kind of is into the QAnon BS,
Yeah.
their feed is completely different.
Totally
That's
different.
how do we, back in the, let's compare that to the NBC nightly news, CBS News, and ABC News from the 70s and the early 80s, when that was the news that
Yeah.
everyone saw. And the
Yeah.
daily newspaper that you get in your city, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch or the New York Times, we were a much more unified thing. And that was back in the days when the next day you'd sit around the water cooler and literally talk about what Walter Cronkite said the night before. And I was a little kid then, but we didn't have this polarization
No.
because we were all watching the same stuff.
Yeah.
Now maybe they were brainwashing us to an extent, but it I think that there's been enough time to realize that there was no great incentive to have stuff that wasn't fair and balanced, unless, of course, if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you're any sort of minority, then you would have a giant beef with the media back then because it was male and pale. So there's no good answer here.
Yeah.
I love all these channels. I love the fact that there's all this stuff. I think it's great. I just think adjust the algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we can guess our way through this thing. So if you have one thought to leave with people from this discussion and from this documentary, what would it be? Just as a closing thought.
I don't know. No one's people aren't going to change people aren't going to change their behaviors. The tool has to change, the tool has to change, vote and get out there and vote. But I could say, well, don't let your children, play with your, have social media tools anytime early, but the damage isn't being done by kids. Kids aren't out there. Kids aren't the ones who are creating the polarizing content. I don't have solutions, John. Watch the movie.
Not so much. Yeah, just thoughts. So
Well, my thoughts that we're headed towards civil war if we don't solve this problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. So for something that I guess I would say is that two things I'll leave with you, audience, and maybe both you and me, Howard, is can you stay off social media a certain period of time, let's say a week or a few weeks or whatever it is, is. a real discussion with someone that disagreed with you wholeheartedly, and actually listen to them, and then try to understand not your arguments, but them as a human. Those are two things that I put out there. That I'm
Yeah.
not saying everybody needs to agree with each other.
Yeah, I
That's
think
not
we all
happen.
need to treat each other better. I don't know how to even. I honestly, I'm so in that rabbit hole. It's hard for me to even imagine engaging with a Trump supporter and trying to convince them.
Not convince them, to listen to them.
Listen to them. I did want to leave you with one thing.
I love watching you squirm, by the way.
When I was sort of a volunteer for the Elizabeth Warren campaign back during the primary, and I was making calls to and texting, I should say, texting with Iowa voters prior to their, and there, you get someone on there who's pro-Trump, and there was just nothing. It was just massive insults, calling me every horrible name in the world, or it was things like Democrats can't do math. Democrats can't, like, actually, well, all Republicans seem to be able to do is add, we're just adding to the debt and adding to the body count. And, so I don't know how you can, when people are being fed wrong information 24/7 and going down that path, I don't know how to.
Yeah, I think that this thing is, unfortunately, I think that we need to change our technology systems. I also think they used an interesting word in the documentary, was the word heal. I think in order to heal these wounds in our society and in our country, there needs to be people who are willing to be physicians. And I think that we can all be physicians to our culture and our society by being more sympathetic, by not agreeing with it. You don't have to agree with anybody, but you can listen and try to be curious and try to understand. Yeah, I think we can
be curious. I agree.
If we can do that as a society, I think that there is going to be healing, and it is just as gradual as we got here in a decade. I think that will also, with patience, it can gradually heal, but it is not going to be a very easy road for sure.
Right.
So I'll say this one thing, was that, it was interesting what Lincoln did after the Civil War, of how he actually healed the nation by not killing people any further, by not hanging people who were traitors, by Vanderbilt building Vanderbilt University in Nashville in the South. These extensions of mercy and of generosity, I think even this day are obviously very moving, but I think those are acts that we need, we're desperate for now.
Yeah.
So,
well, we just executed our first federal prisoner in what, years and years. So since that rule changed. So that happened last night. So I don't know that we're headed in the wrong
definitely
direction.
not heading there now. We're on that trajectory now, but hopefully, hopefully we can get there.
All right. Well, on that positive note.
Thank you, Howard. Great talking to you.
Good talking to you, John.
We will talk to you again. And if you guys have any thoughts on this, please shoot them our way. We will see them, and we will respond back to you. And thanks again for listening this week, and we'll see you next week.